Hello and welcome. I'm Asuma Katauka and you're watching the World Report on News Expo. Let's take a look at the top headlines of this hour. Thailand's Prime Minister says the military continues operations along the disputed border with Cambodia as just strike targets despite a U.S. claim of a ceasefire. The statement comes hours after President Donald Trump says both sides have agreed to hold firing following talks with leaders in Bangkok and Phnom Penh. US President Donald Trump's envoy Steve Witkoff traveled to Germany to meet Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and European leaders for talks on ending the war. The Trump administration pushes for a peace deal by Christmas, though recent talks with Ukraine and Russia show little sign of a breakthrough. Devastating floods and landslides in Indonesia killed more than 1,000 people with the worst damage in Sumatra. Rescuers say authorities report 1,003 dead and over 200 missing as emergency teams struggle to reach affected areas. 2 people are killed and others injured after Ukrainian drone strikes a residential building in the Russian city of Saratov. Regional officials say the governor says the overnight attack caused casualties and damage with no immediate details on the extent of injuries. Over the border, Ukraine says that Russia uses drones and missiles to strike 2 ports, damaging 3 Turkish-owned vessels, including a ship carrying food supplies. The attack follows Moscow's pledge to retaliate for Kyiv's maritime drone strikes on Russian tankers. The Philippine Coast Guard says 3 Filipino fishermen were wounded and 2 boats damaged after Chinese Coast Guard ships fired water cannon at a disputed South China Sea shore. Officials say multiple Filipino vessels are blocked and anchor lines cut near Sabina Shoal, putting crews at risk. A storm sweeps across the Gaza Strip, killing at least 14 people and injuring others, according to Gaza's Interior Ministry. Officials say strong winds, heavy rain, and collapsing structures hit families already displaced by Israel's assault. Iranian authorities detained 18 crew members of a foreign tanker seized in the Gulf of Oman, saying it carries 6 million liters of smuggled oil fuel. State media reports the detained include the captain with crew members from India, Sri Lanka, and Bangladesh. Now we start with Europe. According to the regional governor, Roman Busargin, 2 people were killed overnight in a Ukrainian drone strike on the Russian city of Saratov. In a statement, Busargin has said that the attack hit a residential building, killing 2 people and injuring an unspecified number of others. Saratov, which is located on the Volga River about 625 kilometers from the Ukrainian border, has been repeatedly targeted in recent years, with drones striking its oil refinery and a nearby major airbase. Separately, Russia's defense ministry has said its air defenses intercepted 41 drones overnight, including 28 over the Saratov region. Now for this discussion, we welcome Colonel Sanjit Sirohi. He's an international relations and defense expert, joins us live from New Delhi. Thank you very much, Colonel, for joining us. Welcome to NewsX World. Now, looking at this, how do you think these escalating situations from both sides impact any of the prospects for de-escalation amidst the ongoing talks for ceasefire among all European nations and US as well as Ukraine and Russia?
Yes, afternoon.
Hi.
Now, as far as this thing is going on, the attack by both the sides, the Russians are attacking the energy infrastructure, as a result of which, for last 4 years, they have been targeting all the energy infrastructure. And I can say that they are weaponizing the coal, because for last 4 years, the Ukrainians are suffering because of light, running water and heat. That is on the one side. On the other side, the Ukrainian is hitting the oil infrastructure in Russia. And if you see, Saratov region has been under constant attack from the Ukrainians because it has got a strategic importance. Now, what is the strategic importance we have to understand? First is industrial and economic significance. Saratov Oblast is highly industrialized region in Russia with significant energy and manufacturing infrastructure. In addition to that, it has oil refineries which process large quantities of petroleum products that are important for both civilian and military logistics. And it is also believed that since Russia is exporting a lot of oil to India and China, and the Western world feels that this money which is coming to Russia from India and China is being used for the Ukrainian war. Secondly, Saratov has got a strategic military infrastructure in the form of Angels Air Base, a major Russian airfield from which long-range bombers operate and an asset in Russia's military operations. Past Ukrainian target both targeted oil refineries and air bases. And thirdly, it has got a symbolic and tactical reach because Saratov is located far from the front line and Ukraine is demonstrating its ability to project drones operation deep inside territory. So I think the both sides are trying to pressurize each other to come to the negotiation table, whereas Ukrainian is more desperate for peace because it is losing territory day by day. The Russians are not interested in the peace because they know as and when the war stops, they will have more area what they have today. Usman.
Very interesting. And Colonel, thank you for mentioning Iran here. I would like to focus on that now. Since Iran, you mentioned Iran has done, we also said in our news that Iran has had. Sorry, I mixed the news here. But anyway, going to Black Sea now, focusing on Black Sea. What role should Turkey play when its commercial interests are directly impacted by the conflict in the Black Sea now that the conflict has been spilled into Black Sea?
Now you see the Black Sea is very, very important as far as the exports from the Ukrainians is concerned. And the Russians are also exporting, and 2 days back the Russian oil tanker was hit by the baby sea drones. So it seems that both the countries are trying to dominate Black Sea because both the countries they require Black Sea for their exports and other imports coming on from other countries. So I think this war in Black Sea will keep on going, and both are trying to dominate the Black Sea. Usman.
This goes on and on. It's very dangerous as the Black Sea is vital for many countries surrounding it. Where do you think it's leading now?
Sorry, I didn't get your question.
So I'm building on your answer. I was asking, since Black Sea is vital for many countries who use this as their port, where do you think this conflict is heading now?
Now, this conflict is heading for last 4 years. This conflict has created a lot of problems, especially the supply chains. A lot of countries were dependent on Ukrainian exporting the fertilizers, and as a result of that, even the agriculture products. Now the supply chains have been disrupted, especially because of the domination, trying to dominate Black Sea by both the countries, Ukrainian and Russian. And as a result of that, the other countries are suffering because of that, especially the African countries and India because of the fertilizers and other agriculture products which are required by the African countries. So I think it is in the interest of both Russia and Ukraine and the rest of the world that this conflict must come to an end at any level and whatever it is possible. But both the countries are trying to do, but there are certain bottlenecks which are not allowing them to come to a negotiating table. And the main is the Russian claim of the Donbas territory, which they want completely. That means that 20% of the distinct land of Ukrainian will be occupied by Russians, and then there is no guarantee of Ukraine or for Ukraine that Russia will not attack again. So these are the two major issues on which there is nothing has been coming up. Even the United States have been trying to push through the peace talks. Donald Trump has been pressurizing Zelensky to accept these peace talks, but I don't think any president of any country would accept that 20% of his land territory is being given to the opponent. So if that was the case, then why the Ukrainians were fighting? And if the Russia don't claim that territory, then the question will be asked from Putin that why were you fighting when you have to give back every land of territory which has been captured? So I think this is a very, very difficult situation. and both the countries are trying to dominate. Russians are trying to take as much territory as possible, because as and when the war stops, they will be able to claim more territory. And the Ukrainians are trying their best to pressurize Russia to come to the negotiating table. But it is a very, very difficult task, and even President Donald Trump has accepted that this negotiation or these peace talks are one of the most difficult he's ever faced in life. Usma.
Yes, indeed. Thank you very much for highlighting that. With that, I would like to thank Colonel Sanjit Sirohi for joining us today and sharing that insight throughout our news. Thank you very much. Now we move on to our next news. China's foreign ministry has said that China's foreign minister Wang Yi has met his United Arab Emirates counterpart Sheikh Abdullah bin Zayed in Abu Dhabi, pledging deeper cooperation in investment, oil and gas, as well as infrastructure with the Gulf country. The tour is part of China's broader strategy to expand its influence in the Middle East, which is historically dominated by U.S. interests. According to experts, Beijing is positioning itself as a neutral actor, building trust and promoting trade while engaging in regional security discussions. Now for this discussion, we welcome Mr. Matti Zweig. He's a geopolitical expert, joins us live from Tel Aviv. Thank you very much, Mr. Matti, for joining us again. Good to see you. Now, looking at this, what do you think is China's motivation, and what do you think what is driving China closer to Middle East at this point?
Well, I think it's not new that it's trying to get closer to all the world, not only the Middle East. But in the Middle East, there are a lot of big sources of richness and energy. And I mean, in this case, 1G is coming for oil, gas, infrastructure, investment projects. I mean, basically, what 1G is doing is exactly what Trump was doing, but much less, with less noise. This is because it's the China way. They are more scrambled when they do their business around the world. But the goal is exactly the same, to do big investments, to get more involved in every part of the world. And there are also, I think, other goals, like trying to diversify their resources, because today, China, for instance, is depending in 92% of Iranian oil, because it's cheap, because they have a kind of oils, there are dozens of different types of oil, and the refineries in Iran are specialized in what China needs, and they are trying to diversify into trying to get from other sources too, and of course to be part of drills, to be part of new perforations, to be part of the big money of the oil and naphtha and infrastructures is something that China wants to specialize and to get their grip in all the world. This is understandable.
Yes, indeed. Thank you for highlighting that. And also, Mr. Matti, now what risks and opportunities do you think lie for Gulf states in deepening cooperation with China?
I think they also need to diversify, because traditionally they are big partners, especially Emirates and Saudi Arabia, of the United States. And it's like saying, if we are going to get an only country that we are dependent of, it also can have an influence on their future. China, we don't have to forget that they were also trying to get in high diplomacy, breaking the ice between Saudi Arabia and Iran. They helped them to get better relations, despite all the suspiciousness and all the kind of relations that they had before, and they succeed in it, at least for maybe a couple of years. Now they have to look again what's going on, because Iran is trying to recover for all the blows they received in the last 2 years, and also the lack of progress in the nuclear projects and everything. So they are trying to cautiously to be also part of a diversifying world with different sources. And being part, especially from the big race, which is the real thing that is happening in the world, is the race between United States and China for being the first and the most powerful in the world.
Thank you very much, Mr. Zweig, for sharing that insight as a geopolitical expert. Please stay with us as we come back to you for our next discussion as well. Now we move on to our next news. Iranian authorities have seized an oil tanker allegedly ferrying contraband fuel in the Gulf of Oman, with 18 crew members on board, including Indian, Bangladeshi, and Sri Lankan nationals. According to the Iranian authorities, the tanker had committed multiple violations, including ignoring stop orders, attempting to flee, and lacking navigation and cargo documentation. Iran, which has some of the world's lowest fuel prices due to heavy subsidies and the plunge in the value of its national currency, has been fighting rampant fuel smuggling by land to neighboring countries and by sea to Gulf Arab states. Now for this discussion, we welcome back Mr. Matti Zweig. He is a geopolitical expert, joins us live from Tel Aviv. Thank you very much, Mr. Zweig, for staying with us. Now looking at this, what are we to make of this, recent latest crackdown, Iran's crackdown? What do you think, what gave Iran a green light to do something like this?
Because in the last time, there are a lot of smuggling around the Iran's petroleum oil, and I'm talking about the 6 million liters, in this case, that were seized, and it's supposedly a positive thing because they are implementing the law. They are not trying to let the smugglers and the pirates to take care of all their oil. From other side, we have to be very real and understand that Iran, trying to get in the race of oil supply, they are unfair. They are putting very low prices with a lot of heavy subsidies in order to supply to China, to other countries. And also they behave like international support of terror organizations. So to try to implement the law when they themselves don't care about the international law, it's highly hypocrite. But okay, anyway, it's an internal issue for them. Try to avoid the smuggling, and they are now succeeding in doing that, and not in other cases. This is a big problem for everybody in the Gulf of Oman, like with the Somalis and the Houthis and everybody trying to seize ships and different products, not only oil. And in this case, they seized them, but let's not forget that they themselves don't behave as they should behave in the international arena.
Yes, this is very interesting that, it reminds me of this term, haram police. Anyway, how does Iran's crackdown on this smuggling impact? How do you think this is going to be impacting diplomatic relationship with neighboring countries, which seem to be somehow easing down? But now again, this has happened.
Well, they are all worried, as I said, because you have a real problem of smuggling and piracy in the Gulf of Oman. I told you about the Houthis, I told you about also Somalis and others, but there are a lot of international nets of criminals trying to get this, and sometimes they are connected with high officers in different countries in the area. The most normal countries trying to avoid this are, of course, the Emirates and Bahrain and others, but Iran is also very worried because they can be part from this international piracy that is occurring there, and it has a lot of implications, not only about the act himself, but in the costs, international costs for all the world, in all the products that they are being added to the cargo and to the shipyards. And for instance, we live in Israel, and in the last 2 years, the cargoes has been maybe 3 or 4 times higher and expensive because of these acts of sabotage and piracy, that they are influencing the entire chain of the world supply.
And what's your analysis now that this week we've seen a lot of attacks in recent 2 weeks? We've seen the attacks on Shadow Fleet of Russia, then the ones that was parked in Black Sea, and then this one, and also few in from Venezuela to U.S. From U.S. or U.S. I mean, you get what I mean. So what do you think? What's happening?
I think what is happening is that the entire areas of conflict in the world, you have named it very good, because we are talking about the Middle East, we are talking the Black Sea, we are talking in the coast of Venezuela. They are all part of broader actors and conflicts that they are occurring in those places. I mean, in Venezuela, for instance, it's part of the big policy of Trump to try to do things against Maduro and his narco regime. And so they also are now working in the seas. In the past, it was not very famous. Now they are doing much more because the narco smugglers, they go through the sea. In the Black Sea, it's about, of course, the war between Ukraine and Russia, and this shadow fleet is trying to circumvallate all the sanctions. So they are part of the conflict between Europe and Russia, that they try to avoid deepening the conflict because Russia is trying to avoid all these sanctions. And in the Middle East, is part also of a mix of piracy, big money, and having ransoms from all these ships that the companies are willing to pay, because if not, they know that this will disrupt all the merchandise. And also the big politics between the United States and Iran and everything that is going on in the area. Of course, Israel is involved too in trying to avoid these things, but in a limited way, because in the past, for instance, when they have to strike on the Houthis, they strike straight, but about really reinforcing the forces in the place and attacking all these pirates, it was a coalition of United States, the United Kingdom, and even Italy and other countries that even India sometimes helped too, trying to avoid all this piracy of occurring in the area. But so far, not with a big success, because after 2-3 months of calming down the waves, they start again.
Thank you for highlighting and laying down all of that. And then, so what about the international maritime law? What about the laws and regulation? How might these laws be made use of or enforced for the regional security and considerations for all this that you have laid out for?
Well, international law, I think it's truthfully applied only with all the parts are involved. With only one part is involved and the other one don't care about international maritime law or any other international law, things don't happen. I say this from one side or from the other side. Most of the nations, they know how to take care of their own shores and of their own maritime borders, but they fail about implementing this in international laws. And most of these things are happening in international laws and not in national maritime areas. So this is what they become more and more complicated. I think if the commerce is going to be more disrupted, I think Trump is also going to invest more time and money also to avoid these things. But let's see what happens with the other side of this equation, like Iran and even Russia.
Yes, that would be very interesting, and we will be eyeing that. With that, I would like to thank Mr. Matti Zweig for joining us today as a geopolitical expert from Tel Aviv. Thank you very much. Now, moving on to our next news. According to rescuers, devastating floods and landslides have killed more than 1,000 people in Indonesia as authorities continue to relief and recovery efforts. The disaster had struck the northwestern island of Sumatra over the past 2 weeks, overwhelming communities with heavy rain, flooding, and slope collapses. Indonesia's National Disaster Mitigation Agency has said that at least 1,003 people have been confirmed to have passed away, while 218 others remain missing. Search and rescue operations are still ongoing, though officials warn that difficult terrain and damaged infrastructure are hampering efforts to reach some affected areas. Now we move on to our next news. SpaceX is preparing to go public next year and has opened a secondary share sale that would value the company at $800 billion, according to a letter to shareholders sent by the company's CFO Brent Johnson. The Elon Musk-led company's move towards a public listing, which could rank among the largest global initial public offerings, has been largely driven by the rapid expansion of SpaceX's Starlink satellite internet business. This including plans for direct-to-mobile service and progress in its Starship rocket program for missions to the Moon and Mars. Investors have welcomed reports that SpaceX was mulling a potential IPO that would fund Musk's Mars ambitions and value the rocket and satellite company at more than $1 trillion. SpaceX ranks as the world's second most valuable private startup after ChatGPT maker OpenAI, according to data from Crunchbase. That's all we have time for. Keep watching NewsX World for more news updates from around the world.